All right, good evening. Welcome to the March 10th meeting of the Hamilton Planning Board. It's a few minutes after 7 o'clock. On our agenda tonight, we've got a review of potential bylaw texts. So we'll be talking about an amendment potentially to the business district zoning and some other potential amendments to the zoning bylaw. We have meeting minutes to approve and a few other liaison reports and so forth, and discuss preparations for 2020 annual town meeting. So first up is our amendments, potential amendments to business district zoning regarding mixed use. Is there anything to bring us up to date on, or any new news on it?
Mr. Wheaton was interested in advancing an amendment to the bylaw, particularly at 3.1.3, which is the table of regulations, by making some modifications there to the level of development density that could take place. So you want to talk about that a little bit more, Bill?
I talked to two groups about this. One was the neighborhood group in the downtown area, and the other was the finance committee. And two themes came out of those conversations. One was the residents were upset by the Willow Street proposal that we have and would like to see lower density development, more in keeping with sort of 4, 5, 6, 7 units per acre that characterizes much of the downtown area to begin with. And the finance committee was particularly concerned that development downtown take on a commercial character to help the town's tax rate.
To yes take it on? A commercial character?
So
They were
Advocating.
Pardon?
Advocating commercial.
They were advocating more commercial as opposed to residential development to help out the town's tax rate.
So I don't quite understand that in terms of, because when we've talked to them in the past, or when you've talked to them in the past, they were all for the residential component as well, because, you know.
We're just talking to different people. I guess.
No, I'm just saying that
I
there's
completely
no
got the
difference in the
different.
tax rates between commercial and residential.
No, there's the same tax rate.
Right. And
Commercial is generally perceived, and I think it's true, as using less services than residential. How much less is a matter we could debate for hours.
also going to bring in less money.
But they use less services and bring in a lot of money, or can bring in a lot of money.
But less money than residential would, by a fair amount.
A square foot
Yeah.
of restaurants?
Restaurants?
Restaurants are pretty valuable space.
Well,
More than $200 a square foot for residential. They sell for much more than that. They're appraised at much more than that. If you ask the town appraiser, we have the same tax rate on each of the uses. Commercial use will bring in at least as much value, if not more, than residential, with no potential use of services.
well,
That's certainly
If you
true
have- if you have
downtown.
condos-
Wherever you go downtown, office, commercial uses have a value per square foot that's equal to that of residential, except for millennial towers or something which we don't have to worry about here in Hamilton.
I don't know.
So you get the same revenue and you
I
don't have to
I
worry
don't
about
really think
services.
that's true, especially if it's condo. I mean, we talked about this on our property, Willow Street, and
Yeah, if it was
the
a
condos have a much higher value even than rental, and a much higher value than, I'm not saying proposed condos everywhere, but.
I don't think they, in my conversations with the Finance Committee, they definitely said they were looking for more commercial development. They're looking for anything that adds value.
That adds net adds value, absolutely.
Right, so it's really density. It's the more density going vertically and horizontally you can get, the higher the value you're gonna get. And so they're looking for whatever they can get anywhere in town, and they're focusing on commercial, which is fine. I've tried to explain them that that's all well and good, but there's just not a whole lot of development opportunity in the commercial district as it now exists. The only real property that has the potential to add any significant value is what's under the, well, it typically is, the overlay district, which on Willow Street, which is really from the Palazzolo building, which is the tall building,
Yeah.
to Asbury Street on the, is that the south side or the
Well, east, well, south side of Asbury, but
Yes.
east side of the street.
east side of Willow?
Right,
So
there's a
it
lot of
prob-
land there.
Probably encompasses maybe, what,
Few-
2 acres?
1.5 to, yeah, probably 2.5 to 3.
Okay, whatever the size of that is, that's the only thing that has any development potential. The rest is all locked up, as we've seen. So, you know, if somebody wanted to do some commercial, quote-unquote, mixed-use development, maybe they could do 1 or 2 apartments above one of those buildings, depending on if they could get the septic. You know, if their septic systems would actually accommodate the added usage. So it's like, the only real commercial opportunity is the Winthrop School, and would have to be rezoned commercial.
I beg to disagree. That area there could easily handle a hardware store, a variety of other
Where?
the sites you talk about, sort of
Oh, you mean
along Willow Street where the.
Oh, yeah.
That's an
That's what we're
overlay
saying.
district.
That's what we're saying, is that it's.
I mean, you could put a
mixed-use overlay.
variety
And that's
of
covered,
retail uses in there that people in the town would really like and would be, the retail uses are appraised at $200 a square foot. Small retail uses. Bigger ones are more than that.
Right.
Where are you talking about putting property on Willows? on
In the
Willow
overlay district, at Dodge Tree and then at the.
Dodge Tree and that,
Company.
there's a lot of land. That's about 3 acres, right? 3 acres.
2.5, 3, yeah.
Yeah.
So, there's the retail environment in Hamilton is quite limited actually in comparison to
But
North Beverly or Ipswich or.
the problem is that the retail customers are limited in Hamilton. There aren't that many of us. I don't see the value. I would find it hard to want to put a retail store in downtown Hamilton, especially if it were something like a hardware store, which has to compete with Home Depot at the worst, and at the best, maybe Aubuchon.
Right.
I mean, those,
Yeah, I mean, that's just one example, but
yeah.
you're right. I mean, we've seen where it's tough for retail businesses in Hamilton and, in the shops or on Railroad Ave to stay there.
Yeah.
Every
for any
town
length of
around
time.
us has a brew pub.
Yeah.
That's really an expensive
Yeah.
property. Brew pubs.
Now you're talking
were-
my language, yeah.
Now you're talking about a lot of tax revenue, a lot of business revenue. I don't know why Ipswich got one, Essex got one.
Oh.
Maybe we just don't promote it well, or maybe. But that's my
But
conversations
Those
with the-
areas are more Essex. Essex got one because A, they're on sewer. B, that's a tourist area in the summer, right? Ipswich.
What is Groupon?
They had like
I
an
don't-
industrial area they could put one in.
I don't understand what you're talking about. What is Groupon?
No, brew pub.
a brew pub.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I
brew-
didn't bring my
brew
hearing
pub.
aids, my fault.
And so I just think that my conversations with the finance committee is they'd really love to see the remaining land in town developed like that. I've often approached Laura here and said, well, whether we couldn't have a satellite office center here because of the rail access. That would be quite lucrative too. But the point is that it would be better for the tax rate for development like that, as difficult as it may be, than residential.
Well, that's all well and good. So if, and we have a mixed-use bylaw, and we know that the neighbors on Willow Street aren't happy about it, but that's not unusual. Anytime you put any kind of development in any neighborhood, the neighbors always get upset, because nobody likes change. And it's not to dismiss their concerns. Their concerns are legitimate about parking and noise and traffic and light, and those, all of those things typically get addressed in the hearing process. So I'm And I know the Finance Committee is looking for revenue any way they can get it, and they've been very supportive of the Willow Street project. So they didn't say, gee, we don't like residential component of commercial. We just want commercial, however it happens, if it's mixed use, we don't care. The higher the valuation, the better. So I don't know if we can find other things that are going to have higher value than mixed-use development, especially when it's right next to a train station, which everybody is saying, that's what you want. That's what you want. You want transit-oriented development.
Well, and I think you've got to look at it more in terms of just the broader picture, right? We have a shortage of residential units in town, apartments, condos, what have you. We know that. We've talked to tons of realtors. Everybody says the same thing. So it's not just about revenue. And also, like, you look at our zoning now, we can do 3 stories of commercial if we wanted to, anywhere downtown, right? Again, septic.
Is that by right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So, had we wanted to put a 3-story all-commercial building, maybe with a restaurant on the lower level on Willow Street, I wonder what the neighbors would have said about that. I'm just throwing it out there, but.
I think they would have been too happy about that.
Right, that's kind of my point. So, that's by right, right now this is by right, and we're talking about changing it and limiting the residential piece, which to me, revenue aside for a minute, just isn't the right thing to do. We need more units in town, we know that. I just can't
Right.
see limiting that and not, if you want to get into the discussion about limiting, the height downtown to 2 stories or, FAR, but I think you have to do it for everything then. It's commercial and residential. I don't think you have to just limit residential. If it's about scale and density.
What I always hear from people is they would like the downtown to be more developed commercially, and they would like to keep the residential land use around the downtown in the open space, historic, charming tradition that Hamilton is in. And
Did they actually say that they said?
I think they said that,
do
they
as
said
much
that
do as
when
much
they
commercial-
turned down cottage housing,
No,
80-20 at the town meeting.
No.
No, you don't think
No.
that's what they said?
Well, no.
What did they say?
Some people said, put everything downtown, sure. But the downtown people aren't saying
What
that.
did they say when they turned down cottage housing by just a huge, overwhelming majority? We could debate all night long about whether or not town meeting is a place to do this, but there was a pretty substantial
No, I think
feeling
my
that
overall.
densification was not to be desired.
My overall point, I mean, we're not talking about density out in, everywhere else but downtown right now. That's irrelevant. My point is that I think that, the people that are complaining about residential and commercial combined density would also complain about solely commercial density. If it's the same building, essentially, 3 stories, whether it's commercial or residential.
The
Absolutely.
neighborhood people that I
They
have
would
talked to,
absolutely
your
agree.
argument that the neighborhood is just against any kind of development, I haven't really seen that.
Oh,
I think
who
they
lives in
appreciate-
that neighborhood?
I know.
Oh, no, I get it. And I think that's just because I've been, party to major developments all over town, and so this is a pattern. It's not an unusual pattern.
No, it's not.
And you would expect that to happen in any neighborhood. So, and I think as Brian said, they could have built a 3-story commercial project on the Willow Street property. They wouldn't have liked that either. I can guarantee you that, because it would have been too big. So for what the Willow Street abutters have said is they just don't like 3 stories. They said they could have accepted a senior affordable housing at 2 stories, but the senior housing affordable would not have been 2 stories because it was going to have at least some sort of commercial on the first floor. They were talking about possibly accommodating the Accord food pantry.
Right.
So they would have had to gone to 3 stories. So it is what it is. We have a 35-foot height building limit in town, and people build to that all the time now. So I really kind of have to put that argument aside. They just don't like what's there or what could go there, no matter what it would be, unless it was a single-family home, or maybe a park. I don't think they'd want a parking lot. So that kind of has to go aside. So what is it that we're trying to achieve in the downtown with mixed-use development? So are we looking for mixed-use development? Are we okay with mixed-use development in the downtown?
Well,
No, I'm asking Bill.
I mean, in principle, I'm okay with mixed-use development. I would prefer that most of the mixing be on the commercial end and not
And it
on the
can be.
residential end, because I mean, part of it, we can go back to the fiscal impact, that a lot of small apartments can have the potential of bringing in very little tax revenue and using some services. There'll be some children on this project that will go into the school system. There'll be others. You can't just say, you can put a new piece of development in a town and not have any impact on service costs. May be true for 1 or 2 units, but when you start developing out the downtown, you have service costs, and those will be higher with residential than commercial.
the downtown is pretty much developed out as it is, though.
Well, except,
less.
Yeah, I'm not really worried.
I agree with
about-
that.
I'm not really worried about development downtown, at least in its current configuration. So what I hear is that you, in theory, like mixed-use development, right? It's the scale that you're having a problem with.
well, the mixed-use development in cities, in areas, in other areas is very, very common, very good. It's lively. It provides a wide range of urban amenities. Traditional New England towns are not that. They have commercial downtown, small, large, quaint towns, whatever you want to call them. And then they have, residential development, farms, whatever it is, around that. And the true mixed use is really found mainly in cities, small or large. And I think that the people in town really had hoped over the years that what would happen to downtown Hamilton is there would be more stores, more shops, more businesses, some office parks for people that wanted to work locally, not a lot of apartment residential developments. And I think that's their vision of filling out the downtown to complement the residential areas and farms and whatever open space that surrounds it. And, apartment-based mixed use, they were particularly upset about Willow because 90% of that development was residential. It was really mixed use. It was just like throwing a boiler room on the first floor for maybe one office in order to meet the letter of the law. And I think that said to them, well, you might as well just have put a lot of small apartments in downtown, and I don't think that's what the town has in mind for downtown. I think they want a better downtown, a better business environment, a better, not just a lot of apartment buildings.
So.
I don't agree with that at all. I don't see where that comes up. I don't get that.
So, from what I've parsed out of your
potentially.
comments is you do not think mixed-use development is appropriate in Hamilton.
Say that again, Rick, please.
I'm parsing Bill's comments so that he does not think that mixed-use development is appropriate in Hamilton.
Maybe a few projects, but generally, as a development strategy for downtown, I think that people would prefer more stores, more businesses, more commercial.
Okay, so.
If you have to have a little mixed use to make that work,
So some mixed use is appropriate.
the what?
Some mixed use is appropriate.
I think the way my understanding is people would look at mixed use as, well, maybe we have to do that in order to get the stores, the businesses, and the commercial development. But it's not a desirable end in and of itself. It's a necessary way of getting the commercial development that they would like.
Okay.
Right.
So,
Can I jump in real quick? So the one thing, I mean, we did a fair amount of research over the years on this property and had a number of consultants come in and, people that evaluated the property and did various different scenarios on, what was the best, use for that. And one thing that a lot of them said, I think everybody said, was that in a place like this, second floor and third floor office space doesn't work. Period. Doesn't work. So first floor, sure, offices, retail, whatever it is on the first floor, fine. Granted, our spot wasn't the best for, given it's kind of off the street and kind of in the middle, for, retail things. It would be better as, more of a destination office than a retail space, like on Railroad Ave. But generally, the second and third floor office space is extremely difficult to rent in a town like this.
Why is that, please, Brian, do you know?
It's not that easy to rent in other places, but it's not like we have an office park here, right? That a big company's going to come in and rent 2 or 3 floors of a building, right? That's what a lot of the second and third floor office space is around, is big companies running that. It's not individuals or small offices doing it, but and that's another reason why Palazzolo's building is empty too, other than his apartment. Those 2 floors of office have been sitting empty for who knows how long now, 2 or 3 years.
right.
So it's just a really tough market to be in.
So why, like, I could envision something like lawyers, accountants, maybe a design office or something like that in an upstairs location pretty easily.
Yeah, no.
And more people are working 4 days a week and trying to work at home, but everybody now knows that working at home actually doesn't work. But working at a satellite office building, a mile or 2 or in the same town is a very good way to cut your commute and do remote working.
And again, a little bit of that may be fine. It's just, I don't see it.
So let's focus on the mixed use. So I got as far as some mixed use in the downtown is acceptable from your sort of perception. Is that an accurate
Yes,
statement?
I'm just trying to balance it.
Right, no, and I get that.
That's what this
I don't think-
proposal is for.
I don't think this board is trying to promote one kind of development over another. And as
Right.
Brian said, somebody could build a total commercial building now anywhere in the commercial district by right. They could put a 2-story, they could put a 3-story. So, and they could certainly do it in the overlay district. They could do anything they want by special permit, and they can, do another Palazzola building if the planning board allowed it. So it's a tool or somebody to potentially use. I don't think the planning board is like going, we've got to be building this because that's not our business. So I think the whole, going back to your original proposal, was to figure out a way to limit mixed-use scale. Is that an accurate statement?
Well, not scale in the aggregate, limit the mix of mixed use, right? I mean, I'm not trying to say we only need 2 buildings or 4, we could have 6 or 8 or 10. I'm just saying limit the,
We want to limit residential.
So limited in which direction?
By number or scale?
area. Where the proposal is for area.
Which would be higher and which would be lower?
Well, actually, here would be limit the residential to be the same as the commercial,
Same or less?
same or less as the commercial.
Yeah.
Right, so breaking it down, you just want to limit residential more than we do, period.
Yeah, I'm not trying to prevent development in the sense of
No, I get that.
limiting the aggregate area downtown. If it could all be,
Of residential.
Okay.
Because you're
Then,
not doing.
I'm not trying to limit the area of development. I'm trying to limit the ratio of residential to commercial.
why would you want to limit the ratio of residential to low?
Well, that's where we started in the beginning, because I think that the Finance Committee and I also strongly feel that commercial is better for the tax rate than residential.
But the value of the property is going to be, is it going to be that much different? We don't have a dichotomy in the rates between,
The value of the commercial property would be more or less than residential, depending on what it is. But there'll be less service usage from commercial, which doesn't use any services, compared to residential, which always uses some.
Right, but we're sort of going around in circles here now, is the commercial can be built now, anywhere in the commercial district, so
Yeah.
it can happen.
So I'm fine with that.
No,
and I'm fine with adding residential to it to try and attract the commercial.
Right. So
I'm just
that
trying to limit how much residential we add
Fine.
to attract the commercial.
So
But-
you'll do that by, so you would do.
Which is effectively negating it. Because in any larger scale, which again, there could be very few downtown, in any larger scale building, they need, as we saw, you need a number of units, X number of units, to actually build something that's potentially profitable, right? Given land costs and so forth. So you're limiting that. And you're basically, in the aggregate here.
Can I
Yeah, go ahead.
suggest something? So I use scale in terms of the size and residential. So we could do a floor area ratio.
That's what this is basically. It's the amount of area you get on top as opposed to on bottom.
Right.
Yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
So then we ought to discuss what that number is.
and I
I'm
think
50-50. That's what I'm proposing here. The number that we have doesn't, the current zoning bylaw has no limit. There's a limit on how high you can go, but there's no limit on the ratio of residential to commercial. You could have 2 square feet of commercial.
No.
You could have a teller machine underneath an apartment building, and you probably would meet the letter of the zoning.
Okay, but the other part of the problem is, if you do increase the amount of use of the thing, you're going to have to increase your septic problem, and you're going to have an increased draw on water usage. So how do you deal with that?
I think the septic will be greater with residential than with commercial, but a lot of that depends on the commercial.
Right.
So I can tell you, just sort of looking from, and this is me speaking from my own point of view, is a 0.5 would wouldn't make it in my. I'm just looking at the example of Willow Street, for example. That's a 1 acre lot. There's a 27,000 square foot building on that lot. And that's about probably, a 6:5 ratio?
I think it was like 0.6 or something like that.
0.65?
Something like, yeah, something.
Between
like that,
0.6 and 0.65. I haven't got the calculator in front of me.
That's land value to,
No.
what's?
Land area to
No,
building
it's-
area.
it's floor area
Rick, I missed your
ratio.
first start.
Floor area ra-
Which
so-
property are you talking
Willow
about now?
Okay, so let me back up. Floor area ratio is you take the size of the lot, and you say, depending on the size of the lot, the building that will go there will be a percentage
Total building area.
of the total building area. So let me give you an example. 40,000 square feet on Willow Street. If you said you had a floor area ratio of 0.5, you could have a 20,000 square foot building. Now, you could make it 1 story, you could make it 2 stories, you could make it 3 stories in Hamilton because you would build to the height limit. So it doesn't tell you what the configuration is, but it tells you the total amount of
The gross.
sort of building envelope. What could be within that building envelope is no more than
Half the land area.
20,000 square feet. So in our financial modeling and in discussion with developers who've looked at this, it's very tight in terms of whether this is economically viable as it is now, and it's a 0.65 at the maximum.
But FAR is the same thing as density. What you're saying is, okay, if in fact you want to get more money for the land to purchase it or to buy it with, you have to put more structure on the land, more density, in order to make that economic judgment. Now, I'm not limiting density. I'm limiting the ratio. So in fact, if I would allow, suppose, under this rule, you could have a floor area ratio that would be 2, because you had 2 stories or 3 stories with a footprint of 60%. It's just what you put in that building. What you put in that building can only be 50% residential relative to commercial. The way this is written in this part of the zoning, there's no limit on density. You want to limit density. You want to increase density. I would say, sure, but the question is what kind of density? And I want to limit the ratio of residential to commercial within the building envelope.
Right, so right now, there's no limit on commercial density in town either.
We don't have any FA, no, there's no setback for commercial, right?
Right.
Or parking, maybe? Parking would
Yeah, I
limit
mean, that's a
effectively.
limiting factor on any
Right,
of this,
right, right.
but again, just base
Right,
things.
so there's no limit, there's
on commercial.
no direct limit
Right.
on commercial density, that's right.
Right.
Yeah, and so in applying, so we'll take back out and use your analysis rather than 50% residential. I couldn't support that number, so I would say 75% residential, just because it's got to produce, and it could be either rental or it could be even better, it would be condos, because that's a higher value in terms of the assessed value of that property. But we need housing in this town, and we need transit-oriented housing. We have no apartment, 1 and 2 bedroom being built, and this is the perfect place.
So if you take the point of view of the large majority of residents of Hamilton who don't live in the downtown, right? They see no need for more housing downtown. They see a need for a vibrant commercial center that they can shop at and play at or do whatever they're going to do. They don't really see the need for a lot of small apartments on top of that. I would acquiesce to that because if it's helpful in creating the vibrant commercial development that
Right.
the people want. But I'm sort of, I think I'm representing their views. It sounds to me like you want apartment development per se.
No, we want both.
We want both.
And the way that's being done right now in all kinds of areas all over the place is with commercial on the first floor and residential up top. That's how you see it everywhere now. That's what's economically viable right now.
I mean, I think this is a wonderful discussion because the majority of residents have never participated and voiced their opinion. I mean, we got more than 5,000 voters in this town, and as you've seen in any kind of political gathering, if you get 150 or 200 in any place at any time to express their opinion on anything, you're damn lucky. So we're talking about 1 or 2% of the electorate. The rest are completely oblivious to what's going on. But they won't be for long because we are going to be, and we are approaching the financial cliff that we are probably going to avoid by about $50,000 this year of an override. But next year will be into override. So we're going to be seeing people.
So that, if you're worried about that, then you should be concerned about the service usage of the development relative to its tax contribution, because that would, help the situation more.
And 1 and 2 bedrooms don't produce a lot of students. So.
Well, in the cottage housing bylaw, there was a, wait a minute.
We're not talking about
Cottage
cottage
housing. No, stop.
Oh,
We're
okay.
not talking about
Let him
cottage
finish, let him
housing.
finish,
Okay.
let him finish.
We're not talking about that. We're on mixed-use development in the downtown, please.
Okay, the study done for us for the master plan has several prospective developments, most of which, one is an apartment building, one of which is townhouses, the other of which is cottage housing. In all of those developments, they're figuring somewhere between, 0.5 and 1 student per unit.
That depends on the number of bedrooms.
That's what, I'm just saying what they figured.
Yeah, and that.
Okay? And that would, if you
Bill, we're not.
If that ratio holds on Willow Street will be a financial disaster for the town.
No, it
And-
won't
and
be.
again, if-
It's a $5 million valuation, so if you put up five $1 million houses, they're going to be populated with families with 2 to 3 kids that are going to be in the school system.
But that's not the
Once you
choice
hit two
downtown.
kids-
That's not the choice
Let
downtown.
me finish.
Let
Once
him
you-
talk.
Let me finish.
You
Once you
keep
hit,
interrupting everyone. Just cut it out.
once you hit 2 kids at a price of 8,000, what's the term I'm looking at?
Assessed value?
No. The incremental cost of $8,000 per student, that benefit has been wiped away. So, single-family housing is not a winner in this town. It's costing us money. So, we got to figure out how to provide housing that's needed. 1 and 2 bedrooms aren't going to generate a lot of new students. We've had a 15% decline in our student population, so there's plenty of space in the school system. We're overburdened with a school system that probably needs some streamlining. So I'm not worried about this particular development. It's not going to be a disaster. We don't even know if it's going to take place. So people can build commercial downtown right now if they want to. Great, love to see it. Bigger the better. Anywhere they can build it. So mixed use, we've got one project. That's the only reason that we're even talking about this, is because we have one mixed use development that the neighbors are upset about because they don't like the scale. The rest of the town could care less. They don't know anything about this. If you talk to the average citizen in town, they wouldn't know anything about this. What they want is, they want tax relief. They want lower taxes. The way we get that is by increasing the valuation, and as you said, making sure whenever we do that is to minimize the service costs that development encumbers the town with. So this particular development is highly unlikely, with 14 one-bedroom units, to provide a lot of students in the school system. There are 4
yeah.
two-bedroom units. You might get maybe 4 or 5 new students into the system. That's not going to be a huge burden to the town.
Rick, I'd
So-
like to add to that point. If I were a young person, single or fairly newly married, and had no kids in either situation, I'd move into an apartment in the downtown area.
Yeah, that's what you would.
If I had a kid, especially a kid that was starting to get to be mobile, the one place I would never move would be into an apartment where I couldn't get the grass quickly, because I'd want that kid outside. So I'm not going to move as a young person to an apartment over a business in the downtown area. I'm just not going to do it unless I don't have any kids or am not married, and/or.
Yeah.
And
So
it just doesn't make any sense to me to worry about the kids.
And
And I'm definitely not going to want to have grade school kids in the downtown
Yeah,
area.
and we're talking about, one type of development, right? And we really need to think that, I'm all for more commercial development, wherever that might be, whatever that might be, pub, whatever it is, that's great. We need that. We need apartments, condos. We need single-family homes, right? We need everything, really. We need to balance it. So I don't think we should completely limit or nearly prohibit one just because a few people didn't like it or don't think we need it, and promote something that we need, yeah, but we've always had. We've always had the ability to do it, but no one's building it. So we need to be thinking, along your point of tax revenue and overrides, a way to spurn all kinds of development in a logical, thoughtful way throughout town, not just downtown. That's the only way it's going to happen, because downtown is a very finite area that you said, there's very little property left to develop. So this needs to be a broader conversation, but I don't think we should be limiting one type that there will be very little of in the downtown anyway, when we've got all kinds of needs, and when we have all kinds of, potential, or when we should have all kinds of other potential developments that can bring in tax revenue as well.
The average household in town uses way more than $10,000 a year in services, 9,000, maybe 10,000 in school services. You have to add in something else. Each one of these units will bring in about $5,000, less than half of that. Now, you can say, all right, if you look at the master plan, I can't remember their name, they had people distributed in the 3 prototypical developments that they were talking about that were right around the average number of students in Hamilton today. There are a lot of small houses in Hamilton, which is 0.4. And it's easy to see that these units will use at least $10,000 a year in services
You're out of your mind.
at 0.4.
These units won't, because they're 1 bedroom. 14 of them are 1 bedroom. The only thing that's going to happen is that, a divorced parent might move into one of these units with a kid that's already in town and in the school system. That's what you'll see.
No, a divorced parent might look at that apartment unit and think, oh my God, here's an apartment where I can move in and live for $800, $900, $1,000, $1,100 a month. And I'm in a wonderful town, and I get to put my kid in a great school system. And you think that's a godsend for that person.
Not if I have a kid that's living with me and it's a 1-bedroom apartment.
That's
I don't
exactly
see that as a godsend.
Yeah.
And it's not going to be an $1,100 apartment. It's going to be a $2,000 apartment. So it's,
So
$2,000 apartment?
whatever. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be
Downtown?
surprised.
it'll be, at least a $2,000.
$2,000 apartment?
Oh, yeah, at least, probably 22.
You know what they're getting for apartments in this area, like in Beverly, and it's
Yes.
it's crazy. But
It'll be
I hope you haven't pro formaed it.
no, it was like
$2,000.
it was probably 1,800 for a 1 bedroom.
What I can see wanting to live there is a young guy or a young woman who lives in here and works in Boston, can run out the door, get to the train in 2 seconds, be back at night, bring his girlfriend in or her boyfriend in for whatever, and man, this is cool. I don't have to take care of the yard. I got nothing else to do but
Well,
get to
and-
my apartment and I'm all set.
And elderly people.
And elderly people. Yeah,
That's
when
what
my
you're
wife
gonna
goes,
have. That's
that's
what
where
you're
I'm
gonna
going to live.
That's what you're going to have.
So what are we going to do with this? Because we've been going around and around on this for 3 different meetings.
I mean, a number of us don't seem to support this particular idea.
Okay.
I don't mind an FAR. We did it at the Willow Street Overlay District.
Okay. What do we call it? It's not a real vote. Shadow vote? How many are
Straw
in favor?
Bravo.
How many are in favor of the proposal? Yea or no? Laura?
I have mixed feelings.
Over mixed use.
I think I think a lot of what you're saying, Bill, is true. But I also think the Willow Street development is kind of an outlier. I don't think we're going to see like this springing up all over the place. So I don't know if we're trying to solve a problem with this that probably won't really exist.
Right.
Like, I think if these started springing up all over the place, I just don't think that's really going to happen.
Right, and
So you wouldn't like to see more of these, but you're happy to
And I think you're saying like you're okay with a few, and I feel like that's probably the extent of what would ever happen.
okay. Brian, you're,
no.
you got it? Rick?
I can see it. It's not a big deal with me.
Wait a minute.
Say it again.
I would go for the mixed use.
Well, wait, hold on.
That's not the question.
Do you want the change that he's proposing
Right.
to limit it?
You
No,
support this
do
change?
not limit it.
That's right.
You don't?
Don't limit it.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Thank you.
I'll withdraw the petition. I tried.
I think it's a good discussion to have.
No, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I think I agree with what you're saying, that most people probably want more commercial than residential, but I just think,
Here's an, wait a minute,
Yeah,
let me,
But I think when people say commercial, right, they mean retail. Right? They want more stores they can go to. They want more ice cream shops. They want more whatever.
or
That's first floor.
services, like Bill's saying, like a shared office space, like
Right.
co-work
So-
space, party, event space,
Sure.
something like that.
Sure, that, and
What
that-
is
and
the,
that's
let me,
fine.
let me ask you this. What is the problem that we're solving with mixed use? I want to take a sort of another
It's
turn.
just it's another tool in the toolbox.
To do what?
For
to
housing.
Provide development options in the downtown. We have a commercial bylaw, people can build commercial, they can have those, the retail, restaurants, office space, whatever they want. There's not a residential component. You can't build residences in the commercial district unless you do it under the mixed-use bylaw.
Right. I support a mixed-use bylaw.
Right,
My thing is just the ratio.
right.
You don't want to limit the ratio. I do want to limit the ratio.
Yeah, I want
No, I
I'd
got
rather
it.
have the market tell us, right? I mean, we already said, look, you can't do a full apartment building with zero commercial. We know we can't do that,
With zero what?
commercial. If you want to do residential downtown, you have to make it a mixed-use project. And there has to be commercial on the
Right.
first floor. You can't do just a full apartment building. So we've already accommodated the commercial, which I think was the right move.
But your Willow Street is a little bit of faux commercial, given that 90% of the development
Well,
is
as
residential.
As much as you can put down there, there's 2,400 square feet. I mean,
Well, yeah, no, I mean, you could have probably done more. However, then, there's no covered parking, there's no, amenities for getting cars off the parking lot. I
if
mean,
the
it's-
space is, right, parking determined, parking, septic, and drainage.
I
determines
think if
what
you,
can
if
put
you
there.
want a place to go look at that would be sort of what you would have in mind for mixed use, go into North Beverly, just past, or right beside McDonald's, and go in the back there. There is a
Yeah.
two-angled
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, where the pizza
thing.
place is.
Businesses on the
Frida's
first
Pizza's
floor.
there.
The old-
Really good
old brick
pizza.
building.
Huh?
Rita's Pizza Building,
Yeah, the pizza building,
really good pizza.
yeah.
I can't tell if that's
And it's an
sarcastic.
Italian, the guy who built it, I forgot his name, but I know he's Italian. And I think his daughter had a jewelry store for a while.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't think buildings like that belong in Hamilton.
Well, not
Why
that
not?
Not that look
Because
like that.
those are like
That's
two,
too
at
big.
least two
It's
or
too-
three stories on top
So
of it.
what?
It couldn't happen. It couldn't happen. There's no, we have no sewer. North
No,
Beverly-
what, yeah, of course. There's
Beverly has-
limitations.
Of course.
Here's what I see, and I've worked in a number of non-urban communities. I guess Somerville certainly was urban, but
I would say that's urban.
yeah, Newburyport, Salem, Natick, and here, and the common denominator to trying to make commercial in a small downtown vital, the developers constantly tell you, get more people downtown. Get more people downtown who can walk to my shop at nighttime or before the day, to where I have a captive audience that's going to help whatever commercial I have here thrive. And that's a constant comment that you get whenever you're working at a small community that's trying to make its downtown work.
Right.
And, tell me I'm wrong.
No.
I think, our downtown has some anemia.
That's true.
We have a fair amount of space turning over. And why is that? It's not because the residents in the rest of the town don't want to see a vibrant community. They do. Maybe they're not shopping there. Maybe
Well-
they're driving to Beverly to shop.
And
the mall.
and I've said this for years since I've been here.
Or the
was, half the downtown, half
Yes.
of Railroad Ave is, doctors, dentists, formerly accountants, right? It's all, they're not retail. It's not retail, right? So whether or not, let's say half of those were retail, let's say half the other side of Railroad Ave is retail, would it be supported? I don't know. But again, you're right. You need people down there using the services, right? And Railroad Ave is a bit of an offshoot off 1A. I mean, the 1A corridor is a little bit different story, but again, it's a drive-by community at this point, right? It's not an Essex, it's not a,
Not a destination.
right, it's not a Newbury, right, it's not a Newburyport.
It's an in and
you
out.
know,
It's an in and out.
Right, and I mean, it's great, though, that we have, for the residents, you know, vital things like Crosby's and CVS and a couple restaurants, that's great, but people go to those things, but they're not using some of the, you know, one-off retail spaces that you see in other towns that are doing well.
Let me ask you, how big is the commercial space at Honeycomb?
I mean, not counting the kitchen, it's probably like 1,500 or 1,600.
So the space that is to be created on Willow will be a little bit larger than
Another
that.
1,000 square feet, yeah.
You know, to me, one of the things that you find in communities like this is boutique kinds of bakeries and restaurants that are really good and really cater to the patron are the kinds of things that really work well.
That site, the Willow Street site, doesn't have street presence,
Visibility, right.
which you need, visibility, which you need for retail. So whoever occupies the first floor commercial is probably going to be a dentist or a lawyer or something like
Well,
that.
first we have to get some bids.
Right.
What?
First, we have to get bids.
Right.
There's no guarantee we'll get any bids, so this all may be a moot. So,
Okay.
So 3 years from now, we'll come to Willow Park instead of Willow Street.
could
I withdraw.
could be.
Well, I was
So-
just gonna say, I think it depends on the quality of the retail too, because like Honeycomb is not something people walk to, yet there's always a line there. You know, it's like hidden kind of back there, but if it's a good thing, it doesn't necessarily need the street
Well, and,
presence
you know,
to get a crowd.
Yeah, and we walk to it, you know, from the neighborhood.
but
I mean,
you're-
it's, but
What do you walk to?
Honeycomb.
Oh, yeah.
more
I
than
mean,
should.
that one and the restaurants probably get arguably the most
Yeah.
traffic, I mean, besides Crosby's and
Right,
stuff, but,
right.
probably
No,
because the
and-
quality is higher, and if they're, I think it's chicken and egg, though, the more people you get, the higher quality businesses will come, and then the more people will go there, and
Right, right, and you know, my neighborhood, everybody walks to, you know, the Cow or whatever, you know, it's great, we love having the walkability, and if you had more people downtown, more people would do that,
Okay,
so.
so what's next?
Do we want to get into,
TDR or,
Transfer of development rights. Now, this sprang up from,
well, this sprang up from when we were talking about OSFPD.
Right.
Tim Ford. This is what Tim Ford said he wanted, flexibility.
Tom?
Tom, sorry.
Yep.
Wanted flexibility for developers.
Well, yeah, and it sprang up from when we were talking about OSFPD, it sprang up from Tom saying flexibility, then it kind of morphed into, you know, how do we preserve, you know, the properties that are really worth preserving and getting, you know, the development into, you know, different areas that, you know, aren't on those properties. You know, what's the best way to do that? And obviously, one of those things was, you know, setting up a, what did you call it, Patrick? Essentially a fund that a developer would pay into, then it would go to
Correct.
purchasing open space.
Bank.
Bank,
Correct.
essentially, yeah. That was one option.
And the,
That's a more flexible approach. Because the way this TDR is set up, you have to identify in advance the receiving areas as well as the sending areas. And you kind of, as you go through time, you never know. Maybe people all of a sudden think, oh, this is really the area we ought to preserve, or this is really the area.
Yeah.
And if what you've done is created a bank, then you have maximum flexibility to go out and preserve those areas. Whereas if you're moving development around from one area to the next, you really have to be ironclad sure that this is where you want to put the development and this is where you don't. Sort of like, the bank gives you a little more flexibility.
Yeah,
on how you, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you still,
So just, I need some clarification, because I read this and I had it straight in my head a month ago, but I have no memory and retention capabilities anymore. Giving and receiving areas, which is which?
Sending area is the preserved area, and the receiving area is the area that the development rights are transferred to, and which gets extra development that would have occurred over in the sending area. But you have to know those areas in advance. You're not sort of banking anything, whether it's dollars or units.
So politically and logistically, thinking off the top of my head, probably the only ones that, I mean, you get into a lot of, this could become very hairy when you start,
yeah.
Trying to,
Is who wants to be part of a receiving district.
well, that's right. That's where
Right,
gonna
so
have the
you're gonna
issues,
say,
yeah.
this is the part of town that we're going to develop, and this is the part of town we're going to save.
yeah.
People in the part of town we're going to develop, talk about NIMBY, they're going to fly off the handle.
Well, yeah, I mean, it'd be a political suicide.
Right, so with the bank, you never really,
So the
it's like you skirt those issues a little
Well,
bit
that's what I'm saying.
until opportunities arise.
But even with the bank, you still need a tool that gives the developers, more density than what we're allowed now, right? And that, but with that, they then pay into the bank,
So,
right?
It's just like the inclusionary housing bylaw.
Yeah, more or less.
so how would this work? Walk me through a piece of land. Pick any piece of land. Take Sagamore Hill before it got bought. It's on the market. It's potentially,
No, take
Well, say, wait-
the Essex Street. There's 2 or 3 properties that are going to come up in Essex Street, the farms.
use the Esdale property.
Oh, yeah.
Esdale's fine.
Okay, so play a scenario out for me.
Well, with what, the TDR?
Yeah,
Oh, well,
or the bank. You
The
know.
Well-
the Esdale property, what's the zoning there? 1
yeah, is it half acre there?
acre?
I think it's 1
Is it
acre.
1 acre?
It's acre. So you entertain proposals, say it's 10 acres, which I think is about right.
14.
So you enter, what,
Yeah,
14?
whatever.
Let's say
Call it
10.
10, so you entertain proposals for up to, 15 units as opposed to 10. And you allow them to be clustered and you're very flexible. And in exchange for that, the developer
Put into the bank,
puts into the bank,
or
you know,
identifies another piece.
the extra profit, some fraction of the extra profit that was made from allowing the extra 5 units.
Or, without the bank, they'd have to identify a specific piece of property they were going to preserve?
Well, I guess
Yes, you would have to say, in order to develop the extra 5,
Yeah.
all right, you have to forego development on this part of town that we're trying to preserve.
Who's
And the way
forego?
he would forego it is he would buy the development rights
Okay,
from the property that you wanted to preserve.
got it.
Okay, that's like putting a deed, you have to buy development rights. And then, in exchange, suppose he paid that owner $500,000 for the development rights, and then he got to use those for 5 extra units over on the Esdale property.
Got it. Okay.
right, so that's two different things, right? There's paying an owner for development rights, there's then the bank that the town would have
Right.
money to
He would just-
purchase
he would-
whatever
right,
property
He
they
would
want.
pay into the bank, which is obviously
right,
much
two
easier,
different-
much easier politically.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Something like that to me is much easier politically than this TDR. I mean, it would be such an S show to do that and
Yes,
figure
yes.
out.
I mean, and
it
the other
just-
thing is, I think if I look at something like the Esdale property or the property on Essex Street, if the neighbors said, well, we're doing some cluster development, but it's really only a 50% increase in density, and it's really going to look nice, and blah, blah, blah. And in exchange, we're getting, $500,000 or $1 million, whatever it is, to go into, we'd have to create
The bank.
a open space bank or a preservation bank or something, whatever you want to call it.
And then identify those parcels that you want.
And then since we have our eyes on a wide range of parcels that look like this, then when the opportunity arises, we'll have the money for it and won't have to use up CPA money or have an override or something like that, because we've banked it.
Good.
Yeah, I think for that to go through, you'd have to, which, goes to Richard, is identify parcels and prioritize them, right? That way, when something does come up, you're not hemming and hawing over, 2 or 3 properties. You've got a priority list about which ones you want.
I think you probably
For
also
various
have to set up a legal account.
Oh, yeah.
So that the
Yeah,
school board doesn't
protected account.
take the money.
Well,
Oh, yeah, no,
well,
It doesn't go into the general
question
fund,
would be,
a
does it
separate account.
then go to town meeting for approval when you want to go
Right.
buy that land?
Right.
or-
I bet it would.
Actually, in our
It would
town, the
have to
school,
be set up with its individual restrictions, capabilities, et cetera.
I just didn't know. if
Will,
most of-
will the town have to vote to spend the money?
Well, that's my question.
It
Or we have
depends
some-
How it gets set up.
Yeah.
They would have to be the entity to say that we give the Board of Selectmen the
Right,
power to make
right,
the
right. They either have to delegate that,
purchases.
if they don't, do-
Or they would be adamant and say, no, that comes back to us,
and another
which
point
would
is
be
that,
more likely, I would think.
I'm sorry, Patrick, didn't mean to interrupt. You can't, using the school district as a example is a bad example because it is a school district. It is not part of the town government, so it couldn't come and take money away from the town government, the way you were talking about.
oh, right. Yeah, no,
Yeah, I mean, I want to
understand.
clarify that because that would be a bone of contention and people might misunderstand totally.
I understand.
And you got a big argument on your hands.
Yeah.
Understand.
So, I mean, is that the road we kind of want to go down? Is a flexible bylaw that, for allowing that flexibility, they pay into a land bank, essentially?
Well, in theory, I like the idea, because it certainly has the flexibility. It provides an opportunity, as Tom was looking for, more density, as opposed to just saying, here's, I think it's more, it provides more flexibility. as opposed
Patrick,
to-
is the operative word land bank? I mean, in terms of finding examples of this in the planning
I think
profession?
so.
Probably, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Maybe we could get an example or two of a land bank?
Martha's Vineyard.
It's pretty, can't be 50 pages, must be,
Martha's Vineyard Land Bank, I mean, that's been around forever.
yeah.
Yeah,
Similar.
I'll find us something.
Something. Good idea, okay,
So I hear, do you like this idea,
yes.
Richard?
I'm not sure. I like the idea of being able to bank things and do that. I didn't realize that the town could get involved in that. I was thinking more between transfer development rights, more between two developers or
Well,
two landowners.
It's two different things. Well, potentially two different things, right? So we're talking more of a flexible bylaw with this land
There's a
bank
land bank attachment to it.
versus the TDR. That's how I see it anyway. I mean, there's some similarities, but Wenham has their flexible bylaw, which is how the golf course got developed. They didn't do the land bank piece, but I think you could do both.
There might be another advantage of this, which is if it's actually a bank, and the town is buying land with money out of the bank, it's probably eligible for matching funds for the state from one of several open space, like when Greenbelt buys land, they often match it with state grants if it's appropriate.
Or CPA?
Whereas if you were trying to transfer the development rights, you wouldn't
Right.
be eligible for that assistance.
Yep.
Does that sound plausible to you, Patrick?
Absolutely.
Laura?
So you might, for every dollar you got a developer to put in the bank and you gave him extra development rights, and for exchange for that, you might get $2 out of it for the actual purchase, depending on what the land was and how we could, get state matching funds.
We could find an example, if something already exists, it'd be wonderful to look at that.
Yeah.
I mean, Wenham's bylaw, the flexible bylaw was pretty good. It was very,
No, we looked at that. I'm just thinking of.
oh, the land bank.
For the land bank.
The land bank,
Yeah.
you know, transfer of development rights with the land bank.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're getting muddled here a little bit between a flexible bylaw, a TDR, and then the land bank. I mean, I know the land bank goes with either, but I think we were talking more of the flexible bylaw.
Flexible development bylaw. The degree of flexibility determines how much you put in the bank,
So you.
within limits.
So are we talking about then going back to the Wenham template
Potentially, yeah.
with a land bank?
Because this TDR just gets complicated, and the politics of it would be insane.
Okay.
When you're defining areas, winners and losers, and, oh, well, why is his property getting preserved and mine's not, and, you know, that would be
All
just
right.
nuts.
So,
So, the flexible bylaw takes away all of that.
so
right.
you're proposing a hybrid,
Well, I'm using what Wenham did, essentially, right? I mean, it's just,
but they don't have a land bank.
I get that, yes. So it's a combination of
Right,
a
it's a
land
hybrid.
bank, and, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the bylaw itself is is what allows for the extra density and so forth, and your, 50% more density if you contribute, and again, that's one thing we'll have to talk about, is how, what percentage of what we have them contribute. Profit, who knows how that works? That's one piece that would be good to see an example, but the thing I liked about Wenham's bylaw is it was completely flexible. It was, you could do a combination of things. You could do, it was just all kinds of different, it was so simple, but it allowed, potentially a varied number of things on the same property.
Okay.
And then combining that with the land bank.
Okay, so we're setting aside transfer of development rights off the table.
Yeah, I agree with Bill. I think I'd rather just do this flexible bylaw try it with the land
just a
bank. and then-
question.
yeah,
I
no,
think
it's-
that
I
the
think it's simpler.
open space and the bylaw and the estate preservation bylaw,
Open space and farmland preservation.
preservation bylaw, and the estate bylaw, you might find a way to collapse the two of them into this
Yep.
and take 40 pages and make it 10. And also give us the flexibility in terms of what land in town we actually preserve.
Okay, that sounds good to me.
Might be good. Let's look at some examples.
Possible.
Yep.
I agree with the flexible bylaw approach with the land bank.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know what it takes to set up something like that, but.
It's been done before.
Oh, yeah, it's been done before.
Yeah.
Definitely
And
has.
this planning board loves challenges.
Oh, yes.
Apparently.
Well, no, I mean, just like Bill said, simplifying the bylaws, right? Combining ones that can be combined into
Yeah,
one, it
and-
makes all the sense.
Hey, in the great estates, it's never been used in
That's right.
15 years, so I have no.
There's OSFPD, so.
Right, so we may be able to wipe out two and put one in.
And in the end, get the open space that we want. Possibly even, I've forgotten about the state subsidy idea. That comes through with the land bank, it wouldn't come through with TDR,
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
right?
Okay.
Yeah, there's more flexibility available to a community when you have a land bank
Right.
form.
Other communities that have it, other than, I know the Vineyard has it, I just don't know of any others off the top of my
I
I
know
think it would be
there are
easier to
some
sell to
in
people
Island.
too.
I know there's some in Maine, I know there's some in New Hampshire.
I think it would be easier to sell
Oh,
to the
yeah.
town, right? You're not just caving in on the zoning, but we're getting,
Well, you're not picking winners and losers across town,
Oh,
right?
that's right.
And
First thing.
that would be
you're
a
also
no-show.
getting something in exchange for the zone density bonus that everybody can, see and,
And no one knows what property is gonna get, well, potentially would get developed, or properties, right? So that's the other thing. Again, it's just completely open.
I think the keys to the castle here are to determine what kind of density
Right.
is going to be acceptable and in consideration of how much funding.
right.
So the sticking point would be is if once you define, a bunch of properties that you want to preserve. What happens when, a developer comes in to want to use this flexible bylaw on one of those properties?
Once a what to the bylaw?
Once you define the list of properties you'd like to preserve as open space or preserve in general, what happens when a developer comes in and wants to develop one of those properties using this flexible development bylaw?
You make his payment very stiff.
You know, that's
Well-
the value of having a special permit process.
Right,
Right.
right.
You negotiate it.
Right.
It's like,
So basically, there would be a point where if he asks for too much money, the developer will walk out, and if you
Yeah.
ask for enough money, you have money in the bank
Right.
that you can do something else with.
Right, and
That's the basic
there's
concept.
got to be something defined in the bylaw to at least as a starting point. But, like we did with Canterbrook, we,
You don't want a fixed number, though.
no,
No.
no, I think,
you might want to have some sort of framework or,
that can be
No
modified.
numbers. What you want is something, some verbiage that says, extra revenue the developer gets, some fraction of that will be put into the land bank, and you just,
Right.
you leave it to negotiation.
Yeah, yeah.
How, how much can you get?
it's like
What
we
would the
did-
town be able to do with the money that goes into
We
the
did
land
with,
bank?
Buy open space.
By open space,
Okay.
or by land for open space, yeah.
like we did with Canterbrook.
That's a way, indirect way of
Inclusionary
preserving open
housing
space
bylaw.
rather than requiring it on each
On each-
development project.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we
Minutes?
just killed a lot of trees and say goodbye to the, back to the Wenham bylaw.
Yes. So, I think next time we should all take a closer look at that and see.
We certainly have it, I know.
Oh, Yeah, no, we have it, definitely.
We
And again, it's pretty straightforward. We just need to add that verbiage we were just talking about.
Brian, what are you talking about now?
The Wenham flexible bylaw that we had an example
Yeah.
of before. Yeah.
Yeah,
we should go
we
down
have a
that road.
copy of it, yeah.
Yeah.
Passing out mail.
We have for us. Oops, sorry. Oh, jeez.
Before you sit down, Patrick, is this to replace the old zoning bylaw?
Yes, we continue to try to make sure we have everything intact and accurate. There have been a number of things that we've caught that needed
Correction.
correction, so
So this is the latest and greatest?
this is the latest and greatest for everybody.
So whatever we have at home, we throw away?
Sure.
Okay.
Except for the binder.
We have a binder.
Yeah, I think we do. Some, maybe.
Chris Lapointe gave me the postcard that you have there. It's basically an invitation to 2 free workshops for municipal and land trust employees interested in climate resiliency and conservancy planning.
Okay. What was it again? April
Are they going to
30th.
be the same, just in different places?
Yes.
Or,
That's what it looks like to me.
because it says choose between the 2 dates and locations, so yeah, I agree.
Okay.
One thing on here is you have discussed preparations for 2020 ATM.
Yeah, in that we no longer have an article. I guess it's light duty.
It's your duty to?
No, I said light duty for the
Oh,
board.
light duty.
Right.
Do we need
you
to
want-
vote to pull that?
Yeah, we probably should.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make a motion that we withdraw our proposed bylaw change.
Mixed use bylaw change.
well, our
Before
proposed
town
bylaw
meeting.
change to section 3.1.3.
At the town meeting.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Okay. Do we want to talk anything about Peter and, since
Right.
since Peter,
Peter is, as everyone knows, going to be retiring from the planning board after 50 years of service to the town of Hamilton. We have not set up a party or ceremony yet, but I do think that we should. I'll try to find a place, and I'll try to work out a time with Gradle and Peter and let everybody know.
and
You know,
we talked
that-
about saying something at town meeting too, and we
Yes.
just haven't really talked about who's going to do that. Is it
Right.
going to be one of the selectmen, or?
So how many of you know that Peter got a PhD in economics from MIT in the 1962,
Is that right?
doing his dissertation with Charlie Kindleberger,
Actually, he has
15 years before I came there.
two economics.
What?
He has 2 degrees, actually. I remember reading somewhere.
2 PhDs?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I remember
Only ever
reading.
heard of one.
I mean, did you have thoughts on that, about who should mention it at town meeting? And, say what needs to be said?
Well, probably the current chairman.
Well, that was one place I was going to go, but I mean, the town wants to thank him as well, but I mean, I guess we could combine it into
Who is
one.
the town?
Well,
town meeting members, the 100 that show up.
Well,
it'll be more this year.
there'll be more.
Just make a motion to thank.
Well, no, which is fine. I was just, me or Selectman or Joe or whoever, but I mean, I'll do it. That's absolutely fine. But
I may try to get a resolution from Brad Hill or Bruce Tarr too. This is a pretty monumental contribution from Peter. Half a century on this board, I think is, boy, I wouldn't want to do it.
Coward.
Yeah.
how long were you on it the first time?
Just 8 years.
Okay.
No, 9.
Okay.
Three times.
Okay.
I'm never going to get to 50. Not even close.
That's right. You took too much time off. Meeting minutes from February 4th and the 18th. Anybody have any comments?
Do we have any further thing on Bancroft? They're just getting engineering estimates?
Yeah, they're working on that. And I did advise Ms. Morgan that, the DPW director is pretty engaged in trying to get things put together for Springtown meeting and didn't have the ability to do the kinds of things that she was expecting. So we needed to put that off for a little bit, post-town meeting.
Motion to accept the minutes?
Which date? 4th? Start with the 4th.
Second.
Any discussion?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. February 18th.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
I
We gotta
abstain,
do
I
the
wasn't
18th
there.
too.
What?
We gotta do the 18th as well. Or did you?
Got 2 sets of minutes here.
Yeah, there's 2
Oh, my
sets.
goodness.
I'll make a motion, we approve the February 18th, 2020 minutes as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Anything else? Staff reports, liaison reports? Hearing none.
Any
Thing that I'll
luck on
make you
the-
aware of, I do need to make some postings because we did have our next meeting, March the 17th at 7 p.m. We did have that first
hearing.
slot in the agenda slotted for the public hearing, so I'll have to have prepare a retraction and get it posted and all that.
Okay. Thank you.
And also open space, Joe Saki, who is the MAPC person who's working with us, for us, whatever, and doing the bulk of the writing of the body of the open space and rec plan. The end of the month, towards the end of the month, I think it's the 26th, he's going to come up and give a presentation on a Thursday evening. I think it's the 26th, but I'm not sure. But we're going to get started. The committee is this Thursday morning about how we're going to promote his presentation, what we're going to need. He has offered flyers. We're going to discuss that, where we can put them, things like that. Any way we can get publicity to get people to come to the meeting, and other board members.
Where's it gonna be?
Haven't decided anything.
Right.
Probably right here. I don't know. That'll depend on what
The library, yeah.
library is a possibility. We haven't really thought about that.
Okay. You don't know roughly when it's gonna be, or
It's the end of the month.
Oh, the end of the month, okay.
Probably the last Thursday of the month, I think.
of this month?
Yeah, March.
Oh,
We in March?
Evening?
Evening, yes.
we better get going.
That's what we're doing Thursday.
Okay.
It's about 2 or 3 weeks away.
Okay.
I think we've got 2 meetings that we could have meetings and work on it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Make a motion, we adjourn?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah.
Patrick,